Welcome, everybody. The April 9th regular board meeting. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call roll.
Director Underhill,
Here.
Director Ratterman,
Here.
Director Thomas,
I'm here.
Director Cicada,
I'm here.
President Davidson.
Here. Okay, item 2 is public comment. This time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. Public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action will be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there any public comment today? Everybody on the line? No? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items be acted upon the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that an item be removed for later discussion. 3A, approval of the minutes of the board meeting March 26th. 3B, review board of directors monthly timesheets from March 2025. 3C, ratify claim summary 637. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Did you get that? I move for approval.
Okay, I need a second though.
I second.
Okay, I'm sorry. I can't hear very well today, guys. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to 4B, discussion action. The purchase order for suspended air flotation treatment system for Copper Cove.
You may want to explain where you're skipping 4A.
I don't believe there's anybody in the room that doesn't know.
Why are we skipping 4B?
We're not skipping 4B, we're going on 4B. We're waiting for somebody to show up to discuss 4A.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Good afternoon, directors. So, we're here to discuss the approval of the purchase of the SAF unit from Copper Cove wastewater treatment plant. So the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers approved Section 219 funding for the Copper Cove wastewater treatment plant. The phase 1 of the project, which is underway, it's been underway for a while, is the development, design, the tertiary treatment plant, environmental compliance, and environmental for the Fund 6 project. Phase 2, which we're here to talk about today, is the pre-purchase and installation of the suspended air flotation system for treating the water out of Pond 6 before it moves to tertiary filters. And then the phase 3 is going to be the pond enlargement, and that task is going to be handled by the U.S. Army Corps, and that's in their scope. And then phase 4 is the tertiary treatment plant improvement, the new filters, solids handling, some other items. That work is contingent on us receiving the additional $3.1 million from the Army. So the purpose of the SAF is designed to remove algae and other suspended solids out of the wastewater stream. It works by producing electrically charged micron-sized bubbles encapsulated in like a soap-type film. These bubbles attach to the suspended solids and float to the surface where they can be skimmed off. So some of our treatment plants now, like Forest Meadows, we have DAF units, which are dissolved air flotation. So these are similar to SAF, except the SAF uses less energy and it's more effective at removing the algae and suspended solids than the DAF, which has larger bubbles and doesn't have the soap-like film. So the DAF is more for like scum, greases, oils, and larger particles in the wastewater stream. So this product is a sole source purchase. The SAF technology is proprietary. It can only be acquired through the Huron innovators. It's distributed by Misco Water. There's a local rep for that, sales rep. So there's no competitive quotations available and no similar technologies that provide the same level of effectiveness. So as part of the 219 with the Army Corps of Engineers, this will be an in-kind contribution to our 25% share on the project. So the other in-kind contributions that we're providing for this project is engineering design, the environmental, And then the Army Corps of Engineers will construct and pay for the pond enlargement. If there's any additional 25% share, that would be a cash contribution to the Army. So the SAF unit it generates a large volume of solids that the district will have to handle. So historically, solids have only been handled when the ponds are drained and dredged. So the solids handling, dewatering, and SAF is not part of this first procurement. So and they can so we'll try to figure out ways on handling the solids, but off-hauling super saturated solids can be very expensive in the long run. So we make sure those solids dry. So the recommendations today is to approve the purchase of the installation of the SAF system for the Copper Cove wastewater treatment plant. We also recommend, it's not part of this, the cost of this agenda item, but to also do a rehabilitation of the existing filters that we have in the treatment plant as part of this process. So that we're putting money in the operations budget for next fiscal year for that. And then the full replacement of the filters is contingent on us getting the $3.1 million from the Army in the next allotment. So it'll be like sand filters actually designed for wastewater treatment plants. And additionally, since I wrote this agenda item, the sales tax went up in Calaveras County. So we have to, the numbers aren't correct in here, we have to add another 1%. So we'll make that adjustment for the resolution sign.
Did we not know that?
Yeah, I think it just happened April 1st. I didn't realize it when I wrote this.
Oh. I thought that was the Jewish lie. Can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
So what is the total project cost for everything? Maybe set aside the pond raise, because you said that the Army Corps is gonna pay for all that, right? I'm just kind of curious, total budget with the filters and everything you need to do to rehab, this. What are you guys thinking?
I think it was like 16.
16.5?
So it depends on whether we get the next round of funding we're seeking from the Army Corps. The total project budget is a little over 20 million. Right now, we've received 13.2 million in federal funding. So to close the gap to get to their full 75% share of the total project cost, we've asked for another 3.1 million from the Corps. If we don't get that, there'll be a component of this we won't be able to complete, or at least not as a part of this project, right? So for as of right now, it's between 16 and 17 million, and the federal share is 13.2.
And what you're asking for today is roughly 1.5.
Yeah, so, and that's part of our 25% local match that we'd already committed to.
The 25% match, you're thinking that's gonna be of the additional 3 point, is that what you're kind of focusing on?
No, we'll
just
have
what
to
we
match
have
that as
today.
well. That's just the
Right,
federal
so that,
portion.
okay. so-
Yeah, so every piece of the federal funding we get, we have to match with 25%, which for the most part is coming from in-kind contribution. So all of the design and environmental work that we're doing, the purchase of this piece of equipment, construction management during construction, a lot of it will be work that we're actually doing, and we're paying for it. It comes at, it's a real cost.
Right. Purchasing this unit, it's gonna be installed right away, right? We're just not buying and then waiting for another process, is that
We have to
correct?
wait for it to be fabricated, so it takes a little while. So the idea is that we can't hire an outside contractor for this because the Army Corps has to hire a contractor for this project. So we'll have to do most of the work in-house. I mean, we can hire some hourly labor, I think, but it'll be our crews doing a lot of the installation of this. So the idea.
I just wanted to make sure we were buying and it wasn't just gonna sit there until we are ready for it. It's something we're gonna move forward on once we get the.
Yeah,
the
we
fund.
need to get this SAF going right as soon as possible, because the idea is that we actually anticipated meals procured back in January, but we didn't get permission from the Army Corps to do that. So we intend to be able to drain the pond this irrigation season, but unfortunately, by the time the SAF gets here, we'll be past the irrigation season.
And then another question I read somewhere that said it's gonna increase the capacity to 1 million gallons a day
Yeah, right now,
treatment, and what is it currently?
It's about 400,000, about as much as we get
Okay.
cat filters. So,
Well, it's rated at one MGD, right? It was designed for one MGD. We can't currently do that because of this issue. And so hopefully the SAF will get us up to,
What is the current flow, the average current flow for this plant?
well, it's seasonal, so we run it during the irrigation season, so it goes to the golf course. So we'll have, so we run it during when they need water. So then as the season goes during wet season, the pond fills up and then we drain it again. So we have to supplement with raw water occasionally to deliver enough water.
So it's just irrigation, we don't, you distribute it to just irrigation, you're saying, it's not like,
We don't have
Batteries
access,
or
we
anything
don't have
like that.
anything more than we can provide right now, the golf course.
So, yeah, gotcha. So like
okay.
Michael said, ideally, you're pushing close to 700 gallons a minute because that's what MGD filter only able to generally do half of that. And then even then, we have to backwash so frequently, it's even reducing far less than 250, 300 gallons a minute is all we're able to push. And subsequently, the golf course says, hey, I need more water. So they have to supplement with raw water.
Right. And that's been the case.
Russ, you have something?
Yeah, Kevin, I want to make sure that I understand the logistics of how, for this recommendation that we approve a purchase order for 1,518,000 and some change. But as I read further here, that doesn't constitute our 25% match. That we will only be obligated to pay 25% of that 1.5 million. Is that
No,
correct?
we have to, this is an in-kind contribution, so we pay the entire amount of this out of comes from the CIP loan that we took out.
Okay.
We paid the 100% of this, we have money in the budget for this year, and then that'll take away from our 25% of the dam raise. So the idea is that they do 100% of construction work and we provide 100% in kind on our work. And then there might be a delta that we have to pay at the end.
so currently because the federal funding is 13.2 million, our local match is a little over 4 million. So
Okay.
this will be a portion of that.
Scott?
Go ahead.
Yeah, this project is near and dear to our heart. We were out in Washington DC last week for a hydro conference, but Director Davidson and I and our general manager, Mr. Minkler, have been working on this project, and this is the reason. This Section 219 funding is one of the reasons for going out to Washington DC. Main reason we did receive in 2022, we received $1 million. In 2023, we received another $1 million. In 24, 11.2. That's what got us to this 13.2. Our ask right now since 2024 has been this 3.1 that we need. It will bring the total value of the project over 20 million. We're looking for 16.2 from the Army Corps. So it's this 3.1 that we're asking for now will allow us to do the filter, not the dam raise. I think the dam raise is included in everything that we're doing right now. But right now, the total funding is 13, and then we would owe the additional amount is the 25% that Kevin said is in design that we have already paid, and then this 1.5 will be added to that 25% of 20 million. And Michael, if there's more to add to that, if you would, we put so much effort into this, and just bringing $1 million back to Calaveras County from a federal funding like this. This Section 219 project is the first time that the Army Corps funded a 219 project in California. So this was huge, and our lobbyist is the one who did the legwork, and we actually talked to our Congressman McClintock is very instrumental in this. We also have fortunately have the backing of Congressman Garamendi. And when we first went to his office and started talking about Section 219, he's one of the smartest guys that I know. He knows a little bit about everything. But he didn't know anything about this Section 219. And our lobbyist, Mia, sent his office information. Now they are seeking in his district, similar funding. There are other 219 projects being funded by the Army Corps now, but this is the Sacramento office, and we started working with them. This was their very first one that they had ever done. And so she knew that the Army Corps office in Illinois had done a lot of these. And so she put the Sacramento office together with their co-part in Illinois to discuss internally how they do it. And so this, we're at a real good point. At this point, if we can get that 3.1, then this $20 million, a little over $20 million project flies, and our part of it is responsibility to pay that 25% of the 20 million something.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is fantastic that we're doing this, and I saw this on the agenda. I thought it'd be an opportunity to bring everyone up to date what we've been doing for really 7-8 years now.
Yeah.
Going to DC, this has been, and finally in 2022, we got that first million, got our, what they've been calling Army Corps, but saying, no, we can't, the years before that, we can't do it because there's so many other projects that are in the process right now of funding, and they need to finish those. So that's where we are right now, is we're asking them to get us across the finish line to do this entire project and not just part of it.
Yep.
But we did have to prove that we can do just part of it if we don't get all the funding. That was a big part of being able to get to where we are right now.
Bertha?
Yes, I'd like to know, how are we going to gear up for the in-kind?
The in-kind, so yeah, that'd be for, there's some piping needs to be done, some electrical work and some concrete slabs that we're asking.
Well,
Well, plus the
and
engineering.
As far as the financial contribution goes, we incorporated that into our 5-year financial plan that
okay,
we
but I'm talking
rate study
from
off of.
staff
the-
level.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
That's my concern.
Yeah, so our construction crew is really busy, so they got a
Right.
lot, they try to prioritize the projects that we need, based on the time frame and other stuff, but yeah, there's a lot of competing projects we've got to do out there, and so our construction crew is limited to the few guys we have on the team, so they're gonna make that, I think.
Well, let's get a motion here from Director Thomas.
Yeah, I'd like to move for approval of this item.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Anything else from the board? Any public comment? Any public present? Okay, please call the roll.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Thomas.
Yes.
Director Cicada,
Yes.
President Davidson.
Yes. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll
Looks like
move on
we're
to,
still waiting for Justin, so 4C, and then we'll skip back to 4A.
okay. All right, we're gonna move on to 4C. We're still waiting for somebody from Stockton East. So discussion action regarding audited financial statements for the fiscal year June 30th, 2023. Jeffrey?
There he is.
Good afternoon, good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board. I think this particular item is Director Davidson, or President Davidson's second most favorite financial item of the year.
Absolutely.
There's a lot to it.
Absolutely.
So take your time and be thorough.
Yes, sir. We have Brian Nash of Richardson and Company online here. He's going to give a presentation, and he'll be able to share his screen with us, but there's just a couple things I wanted to talk about first. Today's item is, you have a motion in front of you to receive and file the audited financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024 by the auditing firm of Richardson and Company. The purpose of this particular report is to provide your board, district staff, ratepayers, bondholders, and other interested parties with useful information concerning the district's operation and financial position. The district itself is responsible for the accuracy, completeness, and fairness of the data presented in the report. There are three main sections of the audit, which you have as part of your agenda package: the basic financial statements, the required supplementary information, and other supplementary information. And there are also compliance reports. Brian will go over those as well. The bottom line here is the auditors have issued what is known as an unqualified opinion for the fiscal 23-24 audit, which is a clean opinion, or one in which the independent auditors can state without reservation that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects to conformity with generally accepted accounting principles and government standards. There is also going to be an agenda item after this, which I will address the items that were brought up in the management letter.
Okay.
Brian will address those and anything else that and walk you through the report. Right?
Okay, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
And you should be able to see my screen. On the screen is the independent auditor's report, as Jeff was just mentioning.
Yes.
The opinion provides an opinion on each of your funds that are in the financial statements, the water fund and the sewer fund, as well as the custodial funds, which are the special assessment district that the district does the accounting for. We do have what's considered to be a correction of an error this year, which is recording a public partnership receivable. What that is, it's the agreement with Northern California Power Authority to build the dam on the North Fork way in the past. They built the dam and then provide you some revenue, stream of revenue. There's a new accounting standard that was supposed to be implemented in 2023. We weren't able to do that due to the resignation of your accounting staff right as the audit was being completed, and Jeff was out on medical leave at the same time, so we were not able to get that implemented last year, but we did get it implemented this year. So there's a receivable for the future stream of payments that's being received from Northern California Power. That's called a public partnership. So that's a new accounting standard that was implemented this year. Should have been in the prior year. As Jeff mentioned, there is a compliance report that's what's called a single audit is performed for the district. When you have federal grants, you're required to have a compliance audit of those funds. We do have a couple of findings in that report. One of them is related to internal control over financial reporting. We did have 30 audit adjustments and closing entries posted during the audit. So that's considered to be a deficiency in financial reporting. That's in the compliance report. And there was also changes to grant expenses that we were supposed to audit. There's what's called a schedule of expenditures of financial awards. And the numbers on that report were not final when we started our audit. We had to make some changes. So that's considered to be a compliance finding. Some of the things we're supposed to disclose to you. One of the reason there were some reasons why those things occurred. It was a pretty difficult year for your finance department. The rate study that was approved last fall, the rates had to be implemented into your accounting system. There's a new accounting system being implemented, which is always a big effort for the finance department. That is a really significant item that was happening as the financial statements were supposed to be, the books were supposed to be closed and all these entries found by the district itself. It was that implementing that accounting system at the same time is a really big deal. Jeff being out on medical leave at certain times during the year was definitely had an impact. And you have some new accounting staff. I mentioned your previous auditor or accountant 3 resigned January last year, and you had the new staff. Your new staff are really good. They were very, very responsive to us. They were learning fast, but there was a learning curve there. So all of these things, I think, kind of affected the fact that we had these findings. Or as anything unusual that happens during the audit, we're supposed to disclose to you. There were no changes in the scope that was in our engagement letter. No difficulties other than the entries that we had to post that it did make it take a little bit more time. We didn't have any disagreements with management or anything unusual of that nature. Now I'm going to show the there is what's called a management's discussion and analysis. It's a executive summary. I'm scrolling past that right now. If you just have a short amount of time to look at the financials, that's kind of a good place to start. It'll hit the high points. One of the things that I've been reporting to you in the past is that the sewer fund had been pretty cash poor in the past. It had borrowed from the water fund. There is a loan between the two funds that the sewer fund's paying back, but it's in much better shape this year. You know, one of the issues that you had was you had a lot of restricted assets. These are the R&R funds and the expansion funds. In the past, there was 51 million of restricted money and 12 million of unrestricted. So really had a lot of cash, but it was restricted to just capital expenditures. Well, the new rate study addressed that, where those expansion fees and R&R fees are no longer in your rate study. Now you have more flexible rates. It's available for not only capital, but for operations. So you can see that in the cash balances. You can see that the restricted cash went down from 51 to 41 million, and the unrestricted cash went up. So that was a positive development with that new rate study implemented last fall. And you can see the sewer fund now has $3.2 million of cash. When we first picked you up as a client, there was no cash in the sewer fund, no unrestricted cash in the sewer fund. And the other thing that I noticed this year, this is the first year that the unrestricted net position, the difference between your assets and your liabilities, is actually positive in the sewer fund. It's not very much yet, but it's always been a deficit. So that shows the effect of the new rate study that you implemented last fall with the funds that are less, they're more flexible, you know, less restricted money. Long-term debt declined this year. Wrong page here. The pension liability did go up a little bit, but the post-retirement healthcare benefits liability went down. Your other non-current liabilities for all your loans and leases went down just due to payments. There weren't any significant new additions, and there were just payments, so it's kind of going down. Your pension and OPEB, those are very highly affected by the interest earnings that CalPERS has. So it fluctuates with those investment earnings. When you look down here at your unrestricted net position, one of the things I always point out is how much do you have available in unrestricted net position compared to your expenses. If you look at the expenses on the following page that I will show you in just a moment, you have about 3 months of funded reserves, 3 months of expenses if you took your operating expenses less the depreciation, which is a non-cash item. So that's getting better. It was not that much in the past. You can see $778,000 was all the unrestricted funds in the past. It's now 6.5 million, so that's a positive development. You can see on the income statement side, the operating revenue increased from 14 million to 20 million. And you'll see down here under the capital contributions, this is where your R&R and your R&R revenue went down, and expansion fees went down. So now it's that those funds are up here under the operating revenues. So that's part of the reason for that increase. Also, the rate increase that you implemented is part of that increase. You can see expenses went down. If you took out depreciation, the revenue or the income statement, the expenses went from 24.9 million down to 22.5 million. You can see salaries and benefits went down. The professional services went down, and a few other items went up. Repairs, there were some repairs on pumps from what I understand. Under the non-operating revenue, One of the largest changes is investment income. So finally, governments that have a little bit of cash on hand are finally earning some investment earnings. The Federal Reserve Fed funds rate went up in the prior year quite a bit, and it finally showed some positive impact on your investment earnings this year. So overall, the water fund had a change in net position. Before the capital contributions it was actually a loss. After it was positive. The sewer fund had a positive operating or before capital contributions, and after capital contributions, 7.1 million, 7.2 million overall. I'm going to just hit a couple high notes in the footnotes. This custodial fund here these are the assessment districts that the district accounts for. So those are considered separate legal entities, but it's reported in the financial statements because the district manages those. Here in the cash and investments, you'll see that there's quite a bit of investments. The slugs are where the unrestricted or where the unspent 2022 debt proceeds were. That's the dollar amount at the end of the year that I was auditing. You'll see there's a schedule here that shows the ratings of investments. All of them are very highly rated, nothing under the A level. Going to this public partnership. This is the Northern California Power Authority contract I mentioned, and this is the restatement. There was 4,588,000 was the receivable recorded. There's deferred inflows of resources as the other side of the entry that gets amortized into income over time. So one of the things you may see it as a difference on the income statement is that revenue was considered to be power revenue in the past. It's in a new line item that says public partnership income is where that's reported this year. Capital assets, you'll see that there's quite a bit of construction and progress going on. All of those projects, including the Copper Cove projects you were talking about, lots of activity there. That's one of the reasons the restricted money got spent down, was all those capital projects you have going on. On the long-term liability roll forward, one of the things that's new is this arbitrage rebate liability. When governments have tax-free debt, the federal government has a requirement to rebate any earnings over the interest rate that has to be paid on the liability. So they don't want governments issuing tax-free debt and earning a premium on the unspent debt proceeds, because that provides an incentive for governments to just issue debt and not spend it. So that has to be rebated back to the IRS in 2026. And so you had a consultant that computed that for you. I'm going to show you the so net position. These are the approved reserves that the board has. There's a 90-day emergency operating reserve, water resources and FERC reserve, CIP cash flow reserve, special projects reserve. With the amount of unrestricted net position on hand, these are the funded portion of those. Finally, the sewer fund has a little bit of reserves, and the full 90-day operating reserve is funded, as well as part of the water resources and FERC reserve. It's still not enough to fund the rest of those reserves, but getting there. The new rate study was helpful in that respect. There's page after page here of information on the pension and post-retirement healthcare benefit plan called Other Post-Retirement Benefits. I'm not going to get into that in detail. It shows how all the assumptions used to compute those liabilities. One of the things I just wanted to point out is here's what you're spending all of I mentioned the fixed asset CIP additions, construction and project process additions. These are all the projects that were in progress that had contract commitments that haven't been spent. So contracts that have been approved that haven't been fully spent. There's 20.5 million. And biggest ones, Jenny Lynn tank management, Clearwell, West Point, Welseyville, Copper Cove, a couple of projects there in Copper Cove, automatic meter reading, advanced metering infrastructure, another Copper Cove tank B. So lots of projects ongoing. Everybody's busy. Let's see, so I do want to just point out quickly, there is required supplementary information for both the pension plan and the retiree healthcare benefit plan. This line here shows the percentage funded. It's 82.41% funded. And you can kind of see the changes over time. In 2022, there's a really good investment year and it was almost fully funded, but it's kind of declined a little bit. 23, there was a investment loss. And then this post-retirement healthcare benefits, this line here shows the same thing, 65.7% funded. That's pretty good. A lot of governments don't have that fully funded and don't have that much funding for retiree healthcare benefits. So I'm doing pretty good there. And in the back of the financial statements on the other side of the combining assessment district pages are your debt service coverage ratio. Doing very well, 1.25% requirement. For the 2016, it was 540, let's see, 5,400%. And then with all the other debt that it applies to the 2019, 2021, it's still 934%. It needs to be 1.25 on the water side. Sewer side is also doing really well. 2,607% versus, and it needs to be 125. So no problems there. So the compliance reports, that's the single audit I mentioned. It does have a finding. We've mentioned that it's due to the 30 audit adjustments as well as the expenses not being final on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. These are your federal grants. These are what we audited. We didn't have any other compliance issues. Everything else came out clean on the testing. There is required communications letter. I've kind of covered all of the things in this letter. There is summary of unadjusted differences attached. Those are audit adjustments that were passed during the audit. We're required to show you the adjustments that we should have made that we passed on due to being immaterial. That's what these are. And then here's the management letter. I'll go over these comments really quick. We did mention the 30 adjustments and closing entries are considered to be a deficiency in financial reporting. Jeff has addressed how we're going to deal with that. There's a recommendation about looking at how the salaries and benefit costs are allocated. We think there could possibly be a few staff that don't work on both water and sewer projects. And if that's the case, maybe the salaries for those employees should be allocated 100% to water or sewer based on what they work on, with the rest of them being allocated based on the number of connections, 27% sewer, 73% water, which is done currently. This is just a recommendation to help fix the schedule that we need to use during the audit for cash and investments. There's a recommendation to do the schedule of expenditures under grants a little differently down to the invoice level, be a lot more likely to get it correct the first time if we do it down to the invoice level. So hoping that finance can do that. We have some policies and procedures recommendations. Some of these have been in there for quite a few years. One of them is, generally we like to see new employees be entered by somebody who doesn't process payroll. Apparently Jeff said that's addressed in the MOU, so it's difficult to make that change. But that's a recommendation, as you have somebody not processing payroll, enter new employees. If you have an HR department, they could do that, and then finance processes the payroll. It's considered a separate department that would satisfy that item. There's a recommendation to have a capital asset policy that defines useful lives on any additions, as well as what's considered to be maintenance versus what should be capitalized. We've had a recommendation that the customer service manager review the system report that shows active accounts versus billed accounts, just to make sure there's nothing being missed. The recommended documenting accounts payable procedures. There's a lot of procedures that weren't documented when we first became your auditor. Most of those have been documented. Apparently payable procedures are still not documented currently. But finance did a very good job over the years documenting a lot of the things that they did, luckily, because there has been turnover, and I believe those have been useful. We have a recommendation here related to the funds 104 and 108. Those were joint resources. I think taxes went into those funds. And then they're split for financial reporting. We recommend they're a separate fund be included for the water and the sewer fund to have those resources in them, so they don't have to be split manually for the audit. Apparently there's in the new accounting system and there's a new chart of accounts, and that has been done apparently. And then we did some additional testing this year. We always are supposed to do a new procedure each year to provide some changes from year to year. And we selected the CalCard system as what we're going to test. And so we selected a sample of transactions, and we had a pretty high exception rate. I believe we had 44 exceptions out of 138 transactions, so that's over 20%. So there were CalCard logs not being signed off as reviewed by the supervisor. Maybe they were reviewed and just not signed off. There was also one where the employee that had a charge approved their own CalCard log. There was a missing CalCard log. 2 that were not signed by an employee, 5 where there was supposed to be a purchase order, but there was not a purchase order attached, 6 of travel reimbursement form not being submitted, which is required by the policy, 2 missing receipts, 3 there's a certification of reimbursable expenses when there's a missing receipt, and that was not provided. And there were some that were provided for missing receipts, but then they weren't signed off. And then we weren't able to provide, the district wasn't able to provide written authorization for 10 of the CalCards that were outstanding. So anyway, that's quite a few exceptions. We're recommending providing training on the policies and procedures that exist. The policies and procedures are pretty clear. They look pretty good. Let's make sure we're following those, I think would be the recommendation. Let's see, that one of the things we thought would be helpful is if there's a type name under the signature on the log, so it's clear which employee is signing off. Sometimes you're not able to tell what the employee's name is by the signature. Also recommend adding to the policy if a department head has a charge, or the general manager who approves that's not in the policy. Recommend an inventory be performed of all CalCards and make sure the authorization forms exist for those. And I threw this last one in here. Really, credit cards are an area where there is quite a bit of inefficiency or abuse. So I think really the district should consider limiting how many of those are outstanding. I don't know what the right number would be, but considering that there's quite a few transactions, quite a few outstanding, does everybody need to have a card that has one currently? I think maybe take a look at that. So that's what I had for you today. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Director Adam.
Yeah, I probably say this every year, but I think this audit is obviously mandatory, but I think the most important thing we get out of this is this management letter. And you and I have talked about that a bunch of times. And I think over the last couple of years, we've been taking these into the finance committee and just making sure that we're making these changes. On this CalCard thing, if we could duplicate their testing in about 6 months or so and follow through with that, is that possible that we could duplicate their same testing and come up with they did 143. I don't know whether we need to do that many, but finding 44 deficiencies is troubling.
It is, and we have already started implementing some of the items that he's listed. Now, please note, the items that he had identified in his management letter are through June 30th, 2024. So some of the actions we have taken this fiscal year are not reflected in those items. Some of those are related to capital. And we've already updated the form. We're looking at updating the training. We'll roll that out all at one time. Kelly Richards and myself have already discussed this, and we're looking at internally doing an audit every 6 months. Do half the group have the first go round, second half, so we'll perform our own internal audits of the claims. We also look at the claims when they come through for approval. It goes through Kelly's Sawyer Doyle, and then it comes to Michael Bear and myself and review it. If there are deficiencies, we send them back to the individuals. Most of them at this point have been lacking supervisor signatures, so we send them back to get the signatures so that when they do get filed and taken care of, we have that done. So we've already taken some actions, but there's still more to do.
And to your credit, your memo in here that addressing each of those deficiencies line by line with an answer to them. Thank you very much. I think this management letter is the most important thing that comes from an audit every year, and it's an opportunity. It's just an opportunity to do better. And I hope if we can have this agenda item in 6 months to have this exact same management letter in front of us. And your very similar memo to what has been done on those, that would be, I think that'd be prudent, but it would be very beneficial to us.
And just as a footnote to that, I'm sorry, Director.
No, go ahead.
Or, while we were addressing the management letter items from fiscal year 22-23, I was bringing it back to the finance committee, going through and identifying those, and I will continue to do so.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that point, we did bring several items back prior to the end of last fiscal year. And I'm glad you reiterated that point, because, this is a snapshot in time that it ended in, July 1st last summer. And so some of the projects that are in here as outstanding are completed, but there's others that have started up. So that, it's a different situation now. We used to try to complete these audits before the end of the calendar year, but there's so much, the new requirements we're having to adapt to every year. They seem to take longer every year. This, we will certainly bring all of these management letter items back to the finance committee. Those CalCard findings that's an unacceptable failure rate.
Within 6 months.
Yeah, sooner than that.
Okay.
That is I too view this as an opportunity. We shouldn't have been in that position to begin with. That's my responsibility. So we will follow up on that, and we'll make.
We also bring it to the full board.
We will, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because what bothers me is that, I feel that we're seeing a lot of the same kinds of problems every time this audit comes up. And, and I know that you're concentrating on it and you're going to the, individual that created that, but, just the same type of.
We did knock items off the list that had been some lingering items last year. And so there's some stuff that didn't show up this year that we've seen in the last few audits. And so we obviously still have some more progress to make on that front.
And to follow up on that, I know we're maybe jumping ahead here, but the next agenda item I had was for management report, so I think this kind of goes into it. If you go to page 3 of the staff report for the management letter, page 3 of 3, and this is just kind of gives you an idea of where we are. On corrective, our finding number 9, funds 104 and 108, which Brian discussed. Fund 104 is our admin building fund. Fund 108 is our interest reserve. We had both water and sewer within that. We were waiting for the Tyler conversion to create new fund numbers. When that came through, we have done so. We have realigned. We've gotten rid of all the 100 accounts, which was legacy from prior, where we kind of split the cost within each fund. Now, all the water funds are in 300. All the sewer funds are in 500. So we've already addressed some of these issues. And when Brian was talking about the number of journal entries, part of that was associated with splitting out these funds. So that's not going to be an issue as we move forward. I'm not happy with this. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I agree. And I've really embraced what Brian and his team has done as we go through these items, because they don't sugarcoat it. They go through and identify things. And I'd rather have them identified than not.
All right, so our action is just to receive this today. Is that what we're being asked to do?
Yes.
Are we we're gonna do 4C and then 4D, or do we do them together?
I would do 4C to receive and file,
Okay.
and then get that on record. And then if there's any additional comments or questions you have on 4D, the management letter, we can do that as well. But I think Brian did a good job.
Can I have a motion?
I need to ask one question before I make a motion, but, okay, Jeff, Brian pointed with some, I guess, justifiable pride to the fact that we had investment income of $2,715,000. But then on the next page, it talks about this change in arbitrage payable, that in 2000, I think he said 2026, we've got to write a check to the Internal Revenue Service for $630,000. So could we put a footnote on that interest earned that's a kind of a, I know that this is not based on an accrual basis, but it sort of overinflates our investment income because we're gonna have to give a third of it back.
Some of that income, investment income, was from prior years. Just to refresh the board's memory, a little over a year or so ago, I came in front of your boards to talk about shifting our CIP loan proceeds from Chandler and regular investments to US Bank and PFM under slugs, state and local government securities. And once we moved those into those slugs, the interest we earn on that is not taxable because it's actually exempt. And I can't remember what year it is, either 1976 or 1978, the government changed its ruling.
Yeah.
So that is no longer taxable income. And so the prior years where we built up most of that, but I understand what you're saying. And we have recorded the tax item as a liability, and we restricted funds within those water and sewer CIP funds to be able to set aside funds for that tax payment.
Okay. Unless there's other questions, I'd like to move this item.
I would like to have the motion then. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is there any other board discussion? Any public comment? Please call roll.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Cicada,
Yes.
President Davidson.
Yes. Is 4D gonna be a quick thing?
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah, do you listen to
Does the
Brian?
board have any comments or?
We've kind of already gone through the management.
Yeah.
letter.
Yeah.
Already.
Is there
Bring it to
action?
finance.
There's no action needed on it.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm satisfied. I don't know the rest. So.
I'm good. We'll talk about
Is
it.
there any public comment on the management letter 4D? Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, and I will be available to answer any questions in the future.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
All right,
Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You're
Jeff.
welcome.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, can we handle 4A now?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, we're gonna move on to 4A, which is discussion regarding Calaveras River Watershed Resiliency Plan.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, members of the board. I am here to tee up the discussion on Calaveras River Watershed Resiliency Plan. We can get slides coming up here. But really what this plan is, and as you'll see once the slides come up, is CCWD is acting as a collaborating partner with Stockton East Water District on investigating kind of the resiliency of watershed, Calaveras River watershed, as we move into various climate scenarios and other investigative approaches. Excuse me. Next slide, please. Oh. You can tell that this is my first time. First time again. There we go. So how did this come together? The California State Water Plan update in 2023 emphasized the need and kind of the effort to start to investigate watershed-based solutions and understand how climate change might affect watershed kind of level water resources and fire resiliency. The Department of Water Resources then took the next step of conducting a study in the Merced River watershed to kind of highlight the various tools necessary to do this kind of work. And then they developed a pilot program where they offered up $2 million in grants for 5 different watersheds. The Calaveras River watershed being one of them, and the American River watershed, the Paro River, the Russian River, and Ventura River watershed. These 5 regions are now tasked with developing a watershed resilience plan that incorporates community input and various interested parties, networking, and incorporating the feedback into this effort. One of the first steps was delineating the watershed itself. So this is the watershed boundary for the Calaveras River planning effort. I wouldn't imagine that you have the hydrologic watershed boundary memorized, but this watershed boundary is different in that it's not strictly related to the flow of water. This watershed boundary was developed as more of a cradle to grave boundary. So coming from where water begins to where it ends, not so much from a flow-based system, but also where it's diverted in use. So it also captures folks that might be outside of the actual hydrologic boundary, but use the water that's coming from the Calaveras River. Another initial step was within the network and project team develop a vision statement. This is kind of your generic vision statement for this particular planning effort, where the Calaveras River Watershed Resiliency Plan seeks to enhance water resources resilience for communities and ecosystems and economies throughout the watershed as we move into various uncertain climate futures. This graphic is kind of hard to understand, but it's the graphic that the consultant team uses a lot to convey the scheduling. And what I really want to point out here is that there's kind of 3 tiers to this effort. This upper bar is this community outreach, or what they call the watershed network effort to bring in various interest parties, whether it's private industry folks, tribal engagement, community members, With that Watershed Network held a workshop here at CCWD a few weeks back. It was well attended. So that's one path, or that's one kind of scheduling effort. The other component in the middle is the project team. So the project team is the consultant group, the folks from Stockton East, ourselves, and trying to develop the content for the plan and then try to work through the various issues that we need to address. And then lastly, the bottom section is the deliverables that are required to meet the grant funding. It might be a little bit more easy to kind of decipher in terms of the scheduling. Ultimately, what I kind of want to point out here is that all the work is to be completed by the end of March next year. We're currently in this middle section of assessing climate vulnerability, assessing the risk associated with that, and then thinking through kind of adaptation strategies. With that, I will turn it over to Justin Hopkins, who's General Manager of Stockton East Water District, who's the grantee and project lead.
Yeah, I'll just real brief. Sorry, Justin, to jump in here real quick, just to by way of a further introduction of Justin. This really was initially a Stockton East led effort and continues to be. They were the ones that went after the grant and successfully received the grant, one of only 5 in the state. And I just really appreciate the collaborative effort because they reached out to us. Early on, we were involved in the selection of the consultant, and it has truly been a very collaborative process, as you know, a resiliency plan should be for a whole, watershed wide effort. But just really appreciate Justin and his team and the collaborative approach they've taken to this plan from the very outset. So thank you guys for that, and thank you for being here today.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to present our progress so far on this Calaveras River Watershed Resilience Plan. Also, thank you to your general manager and your staff. They've been great partners on this study. So kind of going back in time a little bit, Stockton East began developing a relationship with DWR on the Calaveras River more than a decade ago. In preparation for our habitat conservation plan that had been in development for many years, which was finally adopted at a federal level in August of 2020, Stockton East has been working with DWR on several fish passage improvement projects. Because of that relationship with us in the years, about 4 years ago, DWR reached out to request our cooperation, I suppose, on a flood marsh study for the Calaveras River. We were the second watershed in the state that was selected. First was the Merced River, led by Merced Irrigation District. And out of that flood marsh study, there was a lot of new information developed. It was largely climate change modeling. DWR is trying to use a crystal ball and predict what's going to happen. We don't really know what's going to happen, but it informed us of some possible future scenarios and how we could use water in a kind of feast or famine type of watershed so that we can sort of sustain the area through drought. Coming out of that program, DWR created this new pilot program, which is the Watershed Resiliency Study. We were a pretty low-hanging fruit for selection from DWR since they've already done so much work on the Calaveras. Unlike the other 4 watersheds, we had 4 years of study that we could already integrate into this. So those other 4 watersheds were starting from nothing. They have to do what we've done over the last 4 years to be a watershed resiliency study. So it was a very, very early on. We reached out to the Calaveras Water District, they're our partners on Calaveras. And this new pilot program is intended to be very collaborative. So it's from headwaters to delta. I know as Andrew pointed out, the map, the watershed map looks a little weird. That's actually based on the previous study, the flood marsh study, knowing that Stockton East had some interest in Little Johns Creek, which is a tributary of Farmington. We were able to get EWR to include that in the study area. So that's the reasoning behind the kind of extra watershed to the south. But the study got off to a great start. We did some public outreach. it wasn't so great. So our consultant, there's been a little bit of work with, kind of changed gears, did more of a directed outreach, been much more successful. So we're going to continue to collaborate with all the stakeholders in the Calaveras, environmental interests, tribal interests, municipal, agricultural, you name it. And the kind of the overarching goal at the end of this study is to integrate everything that was developed through modeling, plus all of our plans. We, at least at Stockton East, one in Calaveras County Watershed, we have a groundwater sustainability plan. And then Stockton East has a habitat conservation plan, USBR water management plan. We have all these plans that sit on the shelf. And so through this effort, we're hoping to take everything and just throw it in the kitchen sink and have one sort of overarching master plan for the whole watershed that aims to satisfy the interest of everyone. The other big driver behind participating in this study is we're kind of, since the integrated regional water management money, it was dried up. We are expecting this to kind of be DWR's next big pot of money to award for projects to get to sustainability or resiliency. By participating in the pilot program, I think this watershed is a front runner for receiving grant funding for our projects. The projects that we're going to so will get integrated into this plan. And,
What type of projects are you?
well, at Stockton East, we have about $100 million worth of projects for our habitat conservation plan, the groundwater sustainability plan.
Yeah.
Depending on which projects you pick out of the makeup, there's a lot of money in projects there. We have our urban water management plans, there's watershed sanitary surveys that have recommendations of, more headwaters type of improvements. And this even goes as far as forest management, so that when you have forests or wildfires, that affects your water quality coming into the watershed. Was there ways to mitigate that or manage that so the impacts aren't so great? And then I think a big part also going back to the groundwater sustainability plan is looking at getting floodwater off the river and into grounds, so that the region can use that and surface water supplies.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, because you answered that, because I, think of all the work that Russ has put into the groundwater sustainability, and I wanted to hear that come out in your overview, so that's great. It was not for naught.
Not for not.
Again, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, question is, does the board have any questions?
That's fine.
Yeah, you mentioned Little John Creek. Any of that $100 million you talked about in projects, is anything focusing on Little John, because it flows significantly through our area around Copperopolis.
Yes, so actually the 2024, this is unrelated to the watershed resiliency study, but it's related to Little John. In the 2024 Water Resources Development Act, worked with our congressman to get authorization for the Army Corps of Engineers to restudy Farmington Dam as a year-round water storage facility. Mm-hmm. So we're hoping to ideally get that study complete, have the Army Corps determine this as a feasible project, and eventually move forward with improvements to Farmington Dam that would not only allow for year-round storage, but potentially increase the storage volume.
It occasionally shows itself as being a significant water storage area. We have extended periods of rain and inclement weather.
Yes.
Anything else?
I think that's it. No, I appreciate you being here, Justin. I'll make a shameless plug for an Aqua Region 3 program at conference on this next month. So keep an eye out for that. And I think too, just acknowledge, because this is a pilot program, there's still, I think there's still a little bit from everybody involved of wait and see how this plays out and how, successful it's going to be, what we stand to benefit, how we stand to benefit from it. But I do see it as a productive process for us to be engaged in and appreciate Stockton East being in at the ground floor and then collaborating with us and bringing us along. So we're there with them. So I think it's a really, really productive effort, both in terms of the water resources planning effort, and it's been a great, I think, team building experience for our agencies as well.
Well, Calaveras River is definitely a valuable fishery for sure. I mean, do you guys want to introduce your board members that came today or? Good to see them.
So I only have one board member attend with me. It's Director Andrew Watkins.
How's it going, Andrew? Good to see you. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And then our water supply manager, Chris Jonas.
Okay, well, thank you guys for coming.
Welcome to you all, and thank you for being here. Really appreciate the collaboration. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. You guys want to take a little quick break? And we'll go on to old business after that. Let's take 5 minutes. All right,
On me.
we'll go back into session. Old business. Discussion regarding process for appointment of a board seat in District 3. Michael?
Yeah, so I know there was pretty extensive discussion of this last board meeting. So really just kind of update. I think the request was this is a standing item until the seat is filled. And so we've done some public outreach. The notice has been issued. And so I think we're in that window of time when folks who are interested can submit a letter. The plan is that we will have a special meeting on April 30th. And the board at that point can interview candidates and it would be up to the 4 remaining board members to decide whether they want to make an appointment that day or schedule a follow-up meeting to consider the appointment. But we would have time either way to handle it however the board wants to at that point.
What's the time frame to be able for the board to appoint 60?
So the time frame needs to be within 60 days of the effective date of the vacancy. So my understanding is the effective date would be the 29th. Is that correct?
Of April.
Yes, okay, of April. Okay, so 60 days out from the 29th of April.
And what is the status on interest in the position or applications received or letter of interest, whatever we're asking for?
I believe we've received just the one so far and but there've been some other folks that have expressed interest. I don't know whether they would whether they're going to ultimately submit a letter or not. But
And then that deadline is what day?
The 25th.
25th. And our next meeting is what day?
our next meeting is the 23rd, but we weren't planning to consider candidates until the 30th.
And the 30th is that special meeting.
It's a special board.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Anything else regarding that?
I think that was all I have.
Okay, we'll move on to a report.
Any public comment?
Is there public comment on seating of a board member?
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Can the board members see who's already applied prior to the 30th?
So my recommendation, just so you kind of have a clean slate, best practice would be that you just wait till everybody's in. And then,
in person.
yeah, so what you can do is by the 25th, you're gonna know who's in. Really by the 23rd, my suspicion is that you're gonna at least have a sense of whether you have more than one person. And then you are set for interviews on the 30th. If by some reason you have 100 people apply and you need to weed out, I'd be very surprised, first of all. But if you did, and you need to narrow it down to have your top folks at the meeting for an interview, we could work with you on that too. And then at that point, you'd use your special meeting to select your kind of top picks.
Put in the packet, hopefully we have at least a couple.
Check your mic.
Sorry about that. Can we at least see what's already been applied, putting it in an open meeting and?
Yeah, I mean, once
there.
the applications are in, they're public. What I'd suggest to you is for staff to manage it and for you to all have the same information. It's best to roll it out all at once, 2 days before the deadline. I'm not that worried about it. But I wouldn't want them to be sort of trickling in over the weeks.
Right,
and
I
having
understand.
folks having to track down this material.
That'd be
So-
cool if we could see them by the 23rd and hopefully have a few.
Just out of curiosity, as far as, do we have to verify the residency?
You should before you make an appointment, yes.
Or
Do you do that during application?
So what was the answer? We should before?
Before you make an appointment. So a reminder that this position, they have to be a resident of District 3, right, Martha? So they have to be a resident of that district, and if they're not eligible to serve.
Wouldn't staff kind of already know that if they accept the application or no?
We can look into a process for verification.
Well, that particular location, I mean, it has to be their primary
Right.
residence.
Correct.
And
Right.
with a large amount of, vacation cabins up there, I think that's something that we're gonna need to make sure that we have.
Yeah,
that
so
somebody is.
we'll provide an update on that on the 23rd. I think it makes sense to wait until the 5th,
Yeah.
until that window closes and then we could probably have, unless we have, a lot of applicants, but we could probably have the board materials ready for the meeting on the 30th. And then at that point, when the 25th comes around, when that window closes, send that out to the board. So you'll have all of the.
You'll have
the letters
everything.
At that point.
Because of course, you're gonna look at this, but post office box is fine for, District 3. It's your physical address
And
that's gonna
primary
determine
residence.
your,
Right.
your
We'll
resident.
report
whether
back on
registered
that on the
vote.
23rd as to how we verify that.
Yeah. So and that's a function of you being a county water district, as you all know. So yeah, just a mailing address is not enough. It needs to be your primary residence in that district. So
Do we need to make that clear when we put out the notice?
If it's not, we can clarify that. Yeah.
All right.
We have history on that issue here.
Yeah.
I could tell.
Well, it'd be nice to know that they are prior to them coming to us to interview.
Yeah.
Because
we
if they're
will.
not, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, we'll confirm that before they come in.
Will do.
All right. Okay, does that conclude that? Is there any public comment? Do we even have anybody on there? Okay, we'll go to the monthly report. Damon?
One's the favorite parts.
By the weight and girth of this, it looks like you outdid yourself this month.
I kind of be streamlined, but also comprehensive.
He's gonna publish this one.
Oh, it's cool.
This one, trying to shifting a little bit. I think it's probably the first time ever where we don't start off with service line repairs in Rancho Calaveras. That's
At one
okay.
point,
We're gonna start in West. So, just, once again, just, showing you all that our distribution folks are staying out, replacing the repairing service line. So this is in West Point on Barney Way. You can see how, that's the backfill section, and then looking at this image, you can kind of see how close that is to the pipe in this section of Barney there. So this repair is actually sitting over that off-white pipe that's in the image on the left. Hard to see a little bit there. And the image on the right is the cleanup in the backfill. And then we're going to move over to a 2-inch water main repair in West Point. This one is interesting because it shows you how much electrical conduit can be located next to water line repairs. And you can see the valves and how complicated this repair could be if you're not experienced, what you're doing. So hats off to Doug and Scott Gruss up in West Point. They do great work. And the image on the left particularly shows you two small, looks like 1-inch conduits, and then there's a couple 2-inch. And then there's, a T, there's all kinds of stuff that it's transformed. So it's a lot of work. Hats off to the guys. This is interesting. So this is an ARV pedestal. So an air relief valve. You can see the blue top, that's the actual air relief mechanism. There's a ball inside of that blue thing. That when water pushes up against it, it seals it shut, but it filled with air, the ball drops and the air is allowed to escape. And so this one has a cover. You can see set behind sanitary apron. But when Doug pulled the cover off to begin with, it was just full of dirt. And so kind of interesting how the dirt gets built up over time in there. And there was a leak on the line that feeds this. So he took advantage of that opportunity to clean it up. Here's a service line repair on Winton Road in West Point. Kind of hard to see. It's set back a little bit in the image on the left. That is the back trailer that y'all approved in capital outlay last year. So this allows our folks in West Point to almost work independently. So they can run the back trailer themselves. They can trailer it out to the location. You can see this is out in a cross-country line. We call it out in the middle of the forest, it looks like. And they're able to do that work. So thank you for that piece of equipment. There it is in the image on the left. Kind of see the trench or the hole just filled up that leaking water, pushing. And then as the vac trailer cleans it out, you can see what we're dealing with in the image on the right. Kind of at the bottom of the picture, the image on the right is a clamping tool that you can crimp the service line off so that there's no valve. You can actually isolate, shut the water off and make the repair without shutting, half the universe off in the neighborhood or whatnot. So that's a valuable tool that the folks make use of out in the field. And then oftentimes when you're done using that tool, the image on the left, you can see the tool. It's kind of got the 3 circles in the middle of it. It allows you to kind of just use a ratchet or use a wrench, just tighten. The image on the right, you put a repair clamp over that. So you don't compromise the whole water main, which shut it down. So that was a solo work effort. This is an interesting one, the middle fork intake, cleaning up all of the debris that accumulates on the intake piping and on the low head dam. So the image on the left, you got all kind of that duff and debris that gets stuck to everything. The image on the right is supposed to clean up. Moving on. This can be a real challenge for distribution crews, for operators out in the field, is when valves are accidentally paved over and you can't find them. So when there's free time, our folks go out with metal detectors and they find buried valves. And invariably, all distribution systems have buried valves, and you can see that Doug was successful in locating this one. And then he exposes it and cleans up around it, puts some cut back around it, and then paints it and marks the alignment of the pipe so that everybody.
You have to put a riser on that before you do all that?
Sometimes you do, yeah, sometimes you do.
On this particular one, it looks like it's about 2 or 3 inches down.
I think what he did is he used cut back and he was able to kind of feather it into the rest of the asphalt around it. But he may have had to put, a small riser in there. I'm not completely sure on that. But you can see there he is with the air compressor and the service truck, kind of post jackhammer work. And then cut back and paint and then move on. Next, you know what I mean? So this is an interesting one, kind of diving into the engineering side of the house a little bit, but I wanted you all get a chance to see what that the tube settler vessel looks like in West Point that's being taken out of the warehouse building, very similar to the pressure vessel that exists at the old Kiva water treatment plant in Copperopolis. So they look really similar, very good. Metal's really thick, so hats off to KW for getting that thing out of there. We took Water Resources on a tour of the West Point system, and we just happened to be at the West Point water treatment plant mid-clarifier flush. So Andrew got to see all of the debris that the filter filtered out.
Wow.
Get shaken up, rattled off the absorption clarifier beads, and then back flushed into the storage.
That's our drinking water.
So that's the system being cleaned. Okay, so my perspective would be all of the crud that was taken out of the river. That's what you're seeing. Your drinking water passed on.
That's what would have been in the drinking water, but for the filter.
Exactly. If you were to just ride your horse up to the river and take it.
Which is not far-fetched here.
No, not at all. Another thing that's really important is to understand the alignment of your system. So, as a treatment operator, one of the first things you learn is you need to understand the flow path, the hydraulics of your treatment plant. You need to know which pipes go where and how the water flows. And that's true out in the distribution system. So when folks have some questions, they file. So they take the back on, they take a back trailer, whatever apparatus they might have, and they to verify that the pipe is where the map says it is. And if it's not, they make adjustments to the map so they better understand this. So that when emergencies happen, they can respond effectively, right? They know what it is they're doing. And that's what this work is. So you can see the PRD vaults in the image on the left. In the image on the right, you can see the back on with pickup tubes. And they were just potable. Well, okay, we completed a USA, we had all the other utilities come through. We want to verify that our pipes are where we think they are. And that's really helpful information. And it provides, it improves operation overall. And so while our guys are doing that on somewhat cloudy, rainy day, then when it snows, they jump in their pickups and they plow. They provide access to our facilities. So that's, here's some images of our distribution folks plowing the White Plains Barnyard and different areas out in the system. Hats off to the guys who do great work, as you all know. And the access is critically important in emergency. So it's our efforts are just as important as the efforts of both the county and all the other folks involved. So if you've potholed effectively and you understand how the piping works in your reducing valve, in and out of your pressure reducing valve, when you come across the PRD, like good old PRD 69 on Sierra Parkway, and you see that thing experiences an issue, you can shut it down effectively. So you can see this is one of those PRDs of the hundreds up on the pass that is in need of replacement. Some of these PRVs, I believe, including this one, exist in manholes, so they're not in vaults. They're in a manhole, 2-foot manhole cover in kind of a barrel, in a, you know, a round, port bottle, if you will, underground. And so when the district can, we take the opportunity to replace it. And so that's, PRV replacement is incorporated into the AMI grant money request. And a lot of those PRVs that exist up here on these pass. So you can see delamination of the metal there. That infrastructure needs to be replaced.
It's nasty.
Looks like it would last another 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, maybe, especially with that vault, see the wood behind it there.
Yeah. If I could go back, just to ask you a question about the snowplow attachment on that truck. I see the hydraulic lines coming to the snowplow, but does your brake system supply the hydraulic pressure for that, or do you have another?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how the pressure is supplied for those.
Also,
They have
its own little hydraulic.
its own hydraulic reservoir.
It's all electric over hydraulic.
Oh, it is.
I see. Okay. That's pretty sophisticated. That's.
Okay, moving on.
Paparopoulos Rush?
Yeah, so this was the clear well. The big bet was, what was the integrity of the existing clear well? Because the roof of this clear well was rusted. And the word we're getting back from the engineering department is not as bad as the detail. So this is Frosnell, I believe it is. They are moving really fast on the rehabilitation of this clear well. The image on the left, you can kind of see that square that in the middle of the tank itself, kind of halfway up the image. That is where the middle support beam will sit when the tank is constructed. And so that they reinforce that. And then in the image on the right, they've actually add all those plates together. So then they can set them up. And I believe some of these tanks are actually setting a welding robot along the alignment of the beam, and it will weld that way. And I don't know if that's happening. It's happened on some of the past there. Yeah. And so you can see the intake piping and how they're covering up the intake piping to keep debris from falling in there while they're working on it. And then they're coating it. Image on the right, they're adding basically an 8-foot sheet. And then they're going to weld that, tack all that up together. And then once they get it all together, they'll sandblast the whole thing, weld it all together. And then it'll look like this, which is the tank. In copper, looks like you could hold a Copperopolis town square fashion show inside of that thing.
Surgery center.
Yeah, and so then this image on the right is really interesting. So these are vent fans. So disinfection byproducts, total trihallomethanes can be oxidized just by stirring the water around and evacuating the air. You can disassociate disinfection byproducts out. So a lot of time what would happen, the disinfection byproducts will evaporate inside the tank, hit the roof, recondense, create condensate, and then the chlorine inside of that drop of water will slowly erode the coating on the ceiling of the tank. And that's why when you walk into a tank, so many times the rafters are on the floor. And so nowadays, Kevin and his team are installing these vent fans, which are fabulous. And there's a kind of a dance between evacuating all the trihallomethanes and removing chlorine completely. So then it's going to be a trial and error for operators to kind of set the timer on the evacuation fan so that we don't remove all the chlorine. So hats off to those guys working on that. That's a heck of a job over in Copper. This is also a heck of a job. You guys know we have approximately 19 cul-de-sacs in the Rancho area that are fed by Bluebell piping, right? And this has come up in the years past. So our construction crew spent the better part of last month replacing the one on Totley and pretty much all rock. And so you can see that they're laying the pipe in the trench and then the rocks and the dump truck in the image on the left, and then backfill with base rock in the image on the right.
Is that sand underneath that new pipe?
It's all base rock. Yeah, all base rock.
Not native soil?
Correct. Not native
Brilliant,
soil.
brilliant.
Yeah, not rocks, not native soil.
What are the crews gonna do now? I mean,
Right, well, they're gonna move on to the next one. And
Excuse
hopefully it
me,
doesn't take a month. Yes,
how much bigger is this pipe?
this pipe is the same diameter.
What do you do with the
Yes,
rocks,
it-
those large rocks, the big boulders? Because don't people want them?
that's different.
They,
Oh,
They-
okay.
they could, yeah, those usually go back to our yards where all the salt, the debris that's removed can be classified. So then we can take out the asphalt. We don't necessarily have a
Oh,
chance to
there's
do
a
that
picture,
now.
yeah.
Right, yeah,
Good idea to sell it for landscaping.
Well,
yeah,
I'd probably want some, but
yeah,
how do I get them there?
Are you putting tracer wires on all
And you
these
are wrong.
lateral?
yeah.
Do you?
My house, unbelievable.
In one of these images, you'll see the
Yeah,
tracer wire.
yeah, it was in the previous one, but
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
you can see the wire there on the,
I'll let Fred know.
on the valve, lid can, basically the G, where the valve lid will sit on top of it. In the image on the left, you can see the wire strapped to the side of it.
No, I don't recall seeing that before. That's a good,
Yeah.
good move.
I wanted to show you the image on the right, just because you can see the scrapes through the rock
Mm.
below that service line.
It's hard stuff.
Yeah, it's just how, super rocky. And then, this is the, bluebell threaded directly into a valve. So the image on the left, you can see the concrete kicker that was poured around the valve and the bluebell threaded into the valve, which our guys have never seen direct thread coupling like this into a flat face of the valve. Normally you're gonna flange a valve connection. And then you see the image on the right, you can see the cut marks where they cut the concrete kicker out to see what the heck is going on and then stop the presses. We gotta take all this. So hats off to the guys. That was a tough shot. They did great work. There's the valve in the image on the left, and you can see kind of a cut of the asphalt. And I think that was actually a concrete driveway apron.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, okay. And then the repair that happened underneath there to get rid of all that bluebell. All right, and then our electricians are always hard at work. So this is replacing a starter motor on a failed, essentially a sump pump at the Arnold wastewater treatment facility in the middle of snow, right? So they're always out working, adventuring on all manner of issues that crop up. Here's the filter control from the West Point water treatment plant. So there's the device on the left is called Magnetrol. And those are really cool devices, and they're the ones that kind of feather out air pressure to open and close valves, to actuate valves. A lot of time you'll hear the ticking of valves inside of the treatment plant, or like a deep breath, like a whooshing sound, and that is the Magnetrol control. So we were having issues with filter to waste and effluent valve controls in West Point. So the operator, Scott, and our electricians got together and they essentially checked all of the actuators in the system to determine that it was the effluent valve actuator that was causing issues, because those valves, they work together. So this valve's operating improperly. This valve's going to do things that are abnormal. And sometimes it's hard to determine who's the culprit and who's reacting to the issue. So the guys worked together and were able to resolve that. But it gives you some insight into what these actuators look like, and these controllers look like. There's an actuator on the left with the top taken off, and the image on the right is the same actuator with the top on. So you can kind of see pneumatic controls and micro switch controls that exist inside of those actuators.
It's all pretty amazing.
Yeah, and then, our electricians go from working in the snow, working on actuators, to plugging their laptops into systems and following what's called the logic of how the plant operates to find out during power fails. Oftentimes, the plant will lose a piece of information that's critical to its operation. So then they have to walk through all of that information, find where the issue was, and restore it. And so that's what happens here, is they basically plug into the plant and then review all of the operations and then make a repair. And this is the similar issue with the transducer, the Jenny Lind water treatment plant on the new Clearwell #2. They're doing the same kind of thing. And this is staff replacing the gasket on the wastegate at the West Point water treatment plant. Another example of cooperation, electricians and operators working together. So hats off to the folks. And we want to just acknowledge first that this is the last ops report, I believe. So we want to say that
Oh, my God.
we love you very much and you will be missed. And I want to acknowledge this picture Cameron Edens took from his home. It's stunning.
Pretty cool.
And, you were always providing a great spark. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good job,
Trying.
David. Next, we need popcorn for these next time.
All right.
thanks.
Okay, we'll go to the general manager report.
Mine will not be as fun, but I'll try. And a lot of legislative and regulatory activity these last few weeks. Director Adderman, I was anticipating me stealing his thunder before board reports, and so he jumped ahead and got into the details of our Army Corps efforts in DC.
Yes.
Yes.
I thought it was one.
Appreciate that. So covered that pretty in detail already. But the week before that, we had some state legislative activity, Aqua's legislative symposium, and then state legislative committee met that week. And then we had a meeting with Assemblyman Tangipa and his office and the staff for Senator Alvarado Gil. Both very productive meetings. I think I reported on that a little bit in when I called into the last board meeting. And pleased to report follow-up from Assemblyman Tangipa already. He actually will be in Calaveras County on Friday. And so we're jointly coordinating with Utica and UPUD and the City of Angels Camp a tour of our shared facilities. He'll be here for a good half-day tour, which is just really fantastic to see him follow up so quickly. Just like I reported earlier, he was very enthusiastic, really aligned, I think, with a lot of our legislative priorities already, and really wanted to learn more from us. And it sounds like is particularly interested in the Utica water conveyance system. So, and we can all understand why. So Kelly has been working closely with that group. We met with them, with those agencies yesterday afternoon. NCPA is also helping to coordinate that. So we're going to start the tour at McKay's and then sort of follow the flow path a little bit. We'll do a presentation at McKay's. We'll go up to Hunter's briefly, down to Murphy's Forebay and Katamatri, where UPUD's water treatment plant is, and finish at the Murphy's powerhouse. And then he has to leave shortly after that. We're trying to pack a lot into that short period of time. And really looking forward to that visit from him. Very packed and productive week back east last week. Mia really, as usual, really nailed the timing for us. We're in this window right now where we were hoping. The plan was the original schedule, the original reason why we chose last week. Was we were hoping by the end of March, we would have a federal budget approved. That didn't happen, but what we got was a continuing resolution that will continue through the rest of this fiscal year, it looks like. Not ideal to have the federal government operating on a year-long continuing resolution, but it was enough for for the Corps essentially to receive instructions to develop their work plan for fiscal year 25, which is halfway over, but at least they're getting to it now. And they had just appointed an interim assistant secretary of the Army that oversees civil works, which is the key person for us. And so that appointment had just taken place the week before. The appointment of the new assistant secretary of Army has also been made, but they have to wait for Senate confirmation on that position. But at least there's an interim in that office now. So the timing was perfect. The Corps is kind of furiously developing their work plan for this fiscal year. They have less construction funding available than they did the year before, and just as many projects competing for that money. So for us to be able to sit down with Army Corps headquarters and the Assistant Secretary of the Army's office, the timing couldn't have been better. And so Mia absolutely nailed it. For us to be in front of those folks saying, hey, we're here, we want to complete this project. We're not asking for a lot of additional money, and we really want to bring it to completion, which they like to hear. And Congressman McClintock was very supportive of that effort as well. We're still following up with his office so that hopefully he will call over to the Assistant Secretary of the Army and advocate on our behalf. So really just getting all of those forces aligned. We met with Congressman Garamendi's office, Congressman McClintock, and then Senator Schiff and Senator Padilla's offices as well. All of them are kind of rowing in the same direction for supporting our request. The other requests that we have put in the event that we don't receive the 3.1 million we're asking for in the Army Corps' work plan, we have already submitted appropriations requests for fiscal year 26. If we receive the funding in the work plan, we'll pull those requests. If not, we already have a foot in the door through our senators to include that request in next year's federal budget. So we're kind of parallel paths at this point until we know what happens with the work plan, and then we'll go from there. So again, it was just really critical timing and really productive meetings to keep this project in front of those folks and keep pushing it forward. We were there also for the National Hydropower Association's Water Power Week conference. And a lot of really beneficial information there. I think I will continue and probably need to do more to encourage our directors to participate more in some of those hydropower events. You've all been great about CSDA events and training and Aqua events and training. But I think it's really beneficial for CCWD directors to engage more directly on the hydropower front as well. It's educational for all of us that are, not hydropower experts necessarily the way most FERC licensees are. And we haven't been as focused on that industry as we have on water and sewer historically. So I think it's really beneficial for us to participate in those events and become more immersed in that regulatory world.
Will you email anything that?
Yeah,
should
absolutely.
look at?
I will share information on future events. And I think also bringing, one of the things talked about with Director Davidson, Director Adamman while we were out there was bringing some of that information to the board. So we'll try to coordinate some presentations where we're providing some information to the board and to the public here about the hydropower market, about the regulatory environment, things that we are now very much involved in. And so I think it's beneficial for the board and for our customers and residents to have access to that information. So we will continue to bring that back. So then met the last day or the last series of meetings was with FERC and met with the offices of two of the FERC commissioners, their senior hydropower advisors. And similar to what it was kind of follow up to what we had done in our visits last November, where when we meet with FERC commissioner staff and senior staff or the commissioners themselves, at this stage, it's really orientation to the Norfolk project, to who we are as a district, to our approach to relicensing, how we're a local special district. We're in this for get the most benefit for our residents and for our community, which I think they appreciate that perspective. We're not, a investor-owned utility. We're not a private sector entity that is only interested in hydropower for profit. We're there for the benefit of the community, and we really try to drive that message home when we meet with FERC officials back east. So, really productive meetings on that front as well. But I do have to share my favorite part of the week. It was spring break for Michelson Elementary last week, so my family was able to join me this time out there. So we flew back on Saturday, and my favorite part was when we landed back in California on Saturday. My 6-year-old's comment as soon as we touched down was, can't wait to get back to CCWD water. Because the tap water in DC is not good. And he just was, he'd had enough and couldn't wait to get back to CCWD water. So credit to our operations staff, to, the quality of water we're just blessed to enjoy here naturally, but also to the work our crews do to deliver that water, because we are spoiled when it comes to quality water here. And I'll have to pass that on to UPUD as well.
It's their water.
That was my highlight. Of many other highlights. but
That concludes your comment?
Yes. Actually, no, sorry, real quick. That was the main thing I wanted to cover, was those DC visits. We have a CPPA meeting next week. I think I already shared the bad news that those electricity rates are going back up to where they were previously when we did our rate study, and we had anticipated those cost increases. And the special meeting on the 30th, we already talked about. Real briefly, just want to touch on the work we're doing with a management consultant. And this was a little bit related to or follow up from the grand jury report last year, where there was some discussion of workplace culture. And so some of that follow-up work, we're still working through. Really great process. I think that we've started with the management team initially started with a management consultant that I think is going to prove to be really beneficial for the management team. So just wanted to, without getting into a lot of detail about it, just wanted to let the board know we're still following up on it. That's it.
All right. Okay, board reports, information items, future agenda items, Director Underhill.
Okay, you didn't make a comment about fire safe? Is that coming up, or are you gonna do that later on? Yeah, okay. Well, I just want to say that I've been talking to a lot of the residents up in Ebbets Pass, and the fire inspections are critical. These people are spending thousands of dollars cutting down trees. It is just amazing. One of my friends is cutting down 20 trees, and that's in addition to what she already has done, for the past few years. It is very critical. It's extremely critical because everybody's afraid. We don't want anything like what we've seen. And they're taking it serious. And so I just, want everybody to be aware that Ebbets Pass is doing everything that they can.
Hey, is that it?
Mhm.
Director Adams?
Okay, let's start at the end of March. I attended our JPIA Finance Committee meeting and liability meeting in Roseville. That same evening, the Historical Society had invited CCWD to do a presentation here locally at the Met downtown. Our Historical Society meeting was yesterday morning, and I got a report on Kelly's presentation, and everyone was, around the table, I think everyone had a comment on how great it was, and they want him back, because Kelly told him he has this much more to present next time, and all new material, all new photos, all new information. So that I think it'll be a standing committee or a standing thing for Kelly to do for the Historical Society. They also heard, I was unable to make it because it was Thursday night and I was in Roseville, and we had another meeting on JPI, our executive committee meeting met on Friday. So I was unable to make it, but I will do everything to get to the next one. Good job, Kelly. And thank you very much for doing that. Everyone, they also reported that everything that they heard as people leaving the door, that was fantastic. One of the better ones that they'd had in a couple of years. And that's saying a lot. There's a lot of good presentations. The Hydro Conference last week in DC was very eye-opening. There's a lot to learn. It's foreign stuff. I agree with Michael. We do need more education on it. Seminars and webinars and that sort of thing would be very helpful for all of us to get a better understanding on everything included in our contract and how it's valued and valuated. Then the FERC visits, at the end of the week, we're also, it's a pretty heady process. But here it is, 2032 is growing, and we've been working on this for 2 or 3 years already, been talking about it for 10 years. And it's not till 2032 till their license expires. And they're paying attention. The FERC people are really paying attention to what we're doing. Also want a lot of information. But during the week, we visited with McClintock, Padilla, Schiff, Pentagon, Garamendi's. Did a lot of work during the week with Mia. Mia's awesome in setting this stuff up and getting in where we need to get in. Tomorrow I have Mountain County's reception in Marysville, hosted by Yuba County Water Agency. And then the following morning, we have our Mountain Counties meeting. And lastly, the property evaluation subcommittee here, ad hoc committee, that Director Thomas and I are working on. We're getting ready to finish up. We probably have a couple more meetings, and then we'll report out our final findings within the next 2 or 3 agenda items as staff sees fit to fit that in. That's all.
Good report. Very
Director
informative.
Cicada?
My district is just really quiet. We don't have anything going on except for the repairs that we do up there. I've been driving through quite a bit lately, and everything is just quiet there as usual. I'm looking forward to getting some education on the hydro and PERC stuff.
Yeah, if I could report one thing real quick
Okay,
from your
please
district.
do.
I just want to mention it because I don't believe I reported out on this, even though it's probably a month ago now, but Damon and I went and met with Supervisor Ondal, the new supervisor for your district, and it was kind of a meet and greet orientation, talked about her issues and where it overlaps with CCWD. It was kind of a last minute thing. We should do it again though, and invite you, and but it was a very positive meeting, and yeah, so we'll probably do a follow-up and make sure you're included in that one.
That would be nice. And the summer's coming up and the good weather, so they'll start having a few things going on. I know the park that they're trying to put together, it doesn't look like a whole lot is going on there yet, but I think it's just because of the weather. That's it.
Director Thomas?
It seems like I reported on this last time, but talking about Kelly's stellar presentations, I just wanted to remind you that he made a similar one at CV Developers, not for them specifically, but for the copper wire communication group down in the place formerly known as Saddle Creek, and everybody made similar comments about his performance, and everybody was saying that that we should have heard some of that before. But anyway, I'm continuing to attend the T-Stand meetings over in Tuolumne County, and I think that we're making some progress on the Calaveras County Parks and Recreation Committee. The board is apparently teed up to approve the park master plan that they paid $200,000 for, and hopefully we'll have some beneficial outcome from that, and some significant improvements in parks accessibility and the quality of the parks in the county. So I'm glad I'm able to participate in that. But that's it for me.
All right. Scott pretty much covered everything that we did on our DC trip. I did find it to be pretty valuable. Certainly learning more about power market. Also, from our discussions with some of the FERC folks about the priorities of the new administration, probably not really focusing too much on hydro, because it's, what is it, about 8% nationally of our total energy. It really depends on what state you're in as to how big of a priority it is. But certainly I think we made some good progress. Also, one of the things that we haven't mentioned here yet, or haven't heard mentioned, was a commitment from Congressman McClintock to either co-sponsor or sponsor some of our recommendations on reforming the FERC process. He made it very clear that he wanted that to be a priority, and well, there's a legislator in either Oregon or Washington that they think is going to be putting a bill forward that could have some value to it. He he made the commitment to either co-sign it or just to sign it on his own based on our recommendations, and that hopefully that'll be something that'll move forward for us.
Yeah.
And, but I thought that was pretty valuable, effort. Other than that, I don't have anything further. We have, our next board meeting is Wednesday, April 23rd. We're gonna adjourn into closed session for 9A conference with legal counsel, anticipate litigation, 9B government code, 54957.6 agency negotiation with general manager. Is there any public comment on our proposed closed session?
And in case we didn't ask for public comment on the ops report or my report or the board reports, that's,
We have to.
we should,
Agenda.
yeah,
Huh?
Every agenda.
we should, yeah.
Oh.
So if anybody.
Is there any public comment on the ops report or the general manager report? I can't believe that anybody would have any questions about the ops report. It was thorough.
And entertaining.
All right. So are we done with public comment? Okay. All right, we will adjourn into closed session.